Well, Cleveland, as of you watching this, we are 32 days away from the start of the Cleveland Cavaliers preseason, only the preseason, but only a month out. It's getting pretty close. We have some off-season, preseason topics to get to with you today on a new episode of the Cavs Insider Podcast. Well, we're happy to be back. Spencer German, Tommy Weil with you on another episode of the Cavs Insider Podcast, getting you ready, counting you down
It's getting
to
close.
the start. Yeah, it is. Like I said, 32 days in the intro, so just a month out now, and exciting stuff, particularly here in Cleveland. I mean,
Yeah.
we're recording it, or we're doing the show right around the start of the football season. So Browns are in the air, Cavs are sort of getting in the air. We got the end of the Guardian season happening, so it's an exciting time of year. But we're certainly excited to ring in the Cavs New Year with you guys, if you will. Tommy, I guess the biggest news right now, I mean, maybe the point of this podcast is that Danny Green's going back to the 76ers, not
man.
coming back to Cleveland, you know?
Breaking news, when I saw that Woj bomb come across my phone 2 nights ago, I could not believe it.
He was you were texting me. You were
Yeah.
like, "Dude, we got to do a pod right now." And I said,
Championships off.
I can't. Championships off. Cancel the parade. It ain't happening."
It's over. Don't start the season.
We joke, but I do think not to. I don't want to start this with with a negative topic here necessarily, but the way that Danny Green saga has now played out with it, and he doesn't end up coming back to Cleveland. It kind of just makes you chuckle a little bit more at how the entire Kevin Love situation just fizzled out last season, because they went out and signed Danny Green because he was a free agent, and they added him to the roster and through waivers, and it kind of became this like, okay, if you think this guy's going to contribute for you in some way, where's his role in the rotation?
Right.
And I harped on all at the end of last year that, yeah, I don't think Kevin Love changes the outcome against the Knicks, but having Kevin Love on this team, the leader that he was, how he was respected in that locker room,
For sure.
and just his presence, which it seemed to help the Heat at least a little bit off the bench, would have, I think, given you a little something extra than what you had. So it kind of just makes you realize, again, that whole situation seems like it was kind of mishandled by them, and maybe if they didn't even waste their time with Danny Green, Kevin Love still would have been on this roster. Maybe he'd be back this year as well. Who knows?
Yeah. And it's funny because you look at the roster and the way it is right now, and even after all their offseason signings and everything, a power forward that can shoot the three, like, you still kind of need that, and you kind of let that go. And I know that with Love's contract and everything, you probably wouldn't have been able to bring in some other guys. I totally get that part of it as well. But, I mean, I still think that Kevin could have definitely brought some value to the team at the end of season last year and heading into this season as well.
Yeah, it would have been an interesting thing to sort of see, and I don't know. That's the one thing that crossed my mind when I saw that was, so they signed Danny Green, Kevin Love left because of it, because he realized he didn't have a role here, and what did it get you? So,
Right. Also, does Danny Green know something about the James Harden situation that we don't? Is James Harden now staying in Philadelphia?
I don't think
I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny. Like,
I saw
one of the 76ers, but like, are they even going to be a championship contender?
By the
this
way,
year?
I saw some story. I didn't read it in its entirely, so that's my fault. But I saw some story about how James Harden was upset that he was snubbed for the All-Star game last year. And I think the names he mentioned being snubbed by were like Kyrie and Donovan Mitchell. And it was like, you were upset that you were snubbed by Donovan Mitchell? Like, Donovan Mitchell had the best year of his career.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I don't know. Yeah, he was. I would have taken Donovan's season over Harden's any day.
I mean, I guess you could have argued Kyrie if you.
Yeah.
I mean, Kyrie was playing well, but if you were just like mad at Kyrie for the off the court stuff, maybe you don't vote him in. I don't know. Anyway, I don't. We don't have to waste time with that because this isn't a James Harden podcast. But yeah,
No,
where
not.
he ends up is anybody's guess at this point. Sounds like he wants to go to LA, and if he doesn't, we're probably going to get fat James Harden in Philly next year again. So we'll see. I do want to, and we have a couple questions that we want to throw your guys' way, that you can certainly chime in on, and in the comments section, also at Cavs Insider _FN on Twitter. However you want to jump in on these,
Yeah.
or yeah, X, whatever. Sorry, yeah.
It's
You
gonna
call
take
it
you a
something.
while.
You call it something for like over a decade.
Oh, I know.
Like decade and a half, and it's like, what am I? I don't know. It's a hard thing to break. But we'll get to those coming up. But I did want to talk, Tommy, just about the pressure that I think is on this team this year, and it kind of ties in nicely with I mentioned the start of the NFL season, because I also think in town there's a lot of pressure on another team in town, in the Cleveland Browns, in that they went out this offseason and made all these moves and addressed all these needs, and they built this roster that people are calling it the best roster the Browns have had since they've returned to Cleveland in 1999, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on them. But I actually think, to bring this back to basketball, that there's more pressure on the Cavs this year than there even is on the Browns. And the reason I say that is because in the NBA, these windows of opportunity are so fleeting. In the NFL, you can, if you have a star quarterback, which the Browns obviously think they do, you can kind of keep that window open a little bit longer. But in the NBA, these windows with a star player like Donovan Mitchell are fleeting, and it's rare that a town like Cleveland has a guy like that. And we know what the talk's been about. We actually just talked before we jumped on the show here that it's going to be a topic all year is Donovan Mitchell upset? Does he want out? It's every single night we're going to get those questions. But I do think because of that question existing, and there's this flirting with New York that's been going on all off season as well, and we know he's from there, that there's a ton of pressure on this team this year to perform and to win and to sort of take another step towards showing that this is a viable thing that he should be a part of, and they want him to be a part of. Otherwise, yeah, like I think he's going to be sitting there towards the end of next season and considering his options and considering if he wants to stay in Cleveland long term. Right. So I think there's a ton of pressure going on the Cavs into the season.
No, I mean, like you said, we were talking about this beforehand. Like the Donovan Mitchell storylines about, is Donovan Mitchell going to get traded? Is Donovan Mitchell happy? Like those are going to get tired so quick.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Everything that he says and everything that he does is going to be put under a microscope the entire year. And whether he, means what he says or people are reading between the lines, like whether that's fair or not, like people are going to dissect every single sentence that comes out of his mouth. And I don't know, I'm already tired of it, but it's going to be on the radar. If they're not playing well, people are going to be talking about it. Even if they are playing well, the conversation is this enough? Is this enough to get this far in the playoffs? Is this enough for wanting to keep Donovan Mitchell around? I mean, it's going to be the topic of the year.
It is. And yeah, I want to see Donovan Mitchell stay here.
Oh, for sure.
I understand where there's that flirtation with New York and why he's, got the googly eyes for a place where he always envisioned he'd probably play. I have brought up, and I think we've talked about this, Tommy, like, do the Knicks even want him a year from now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the situation that they're in, and that's fair too. But even if it's not New York, does Donovan Mitchell want the Cavs? And that's what this season really is going to be about, because you're trying to basically sell him on the idea that we want you to stay here. And to do that, it can't be another first-round playoff exit. It has to be you show – I talk about this all the time across sports. Like, I think as fans, people like to view sports as like a linear thing. They see a team, like take the Guardians, for example, that's like super, super young, and they're like, okay, well, yeah, they have a pretty good year, so the next natural step is, well, they go a little further in the playoffs. And I think, to talk about that team briefly, like we saw the opposite of that this year. Like they were maybe a little bit ahead of schedule in 2022, and then in 2023 they came out, and now they're a sinking ship that's about to miss the playoffs, and we're sitting here asking ourselves, like, what is that team, and who should stay and who should go? So I it's not always linear in sports, that just because you did something one year, that the next year you're guaranteed to do that next thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
for sure.
And so with the Cavs, like, it has to be linear though this year. Like, it was great. 2 years ago was fun because we didn't expect that, what happened with them, and they ended up being a playing team, and it was like, okay, it ended sort of unceremoniously, but we at least enjoyed the ride. And then this past year was, we all, I think most people felt there was a really good opportunity and that they had a chance to win that series, and they were absolutely just, shell-shocked. So it has to be a linear thing now where not only do you make the playoffs, you got to get out of the first round at least and say like, okay, and then make it a series in the second series.
Right.
That's like the minimum of what they have to do to sort of sell Donovan Mitchell, I think, on staying here.
And honestly, they have to do all that in an Eastern Conference that I think you can make the argument is better than the Western Conference this year. I mean, you have Boston, you have
You think
Miami. Like, I really think the Eastern Conference is overall, I think the Western Conference is top heavy, but I think if you look at all the teams in the Eastern Conference, I think they're all pretty even, especially in that, like, 6 to like 10 range, like with the play-in tournament. Like, those are all very similar teams with very similar talent. So I think overall it's a better conference than the Western conferences this year.
That feels like a little bit of a hot take there,
It
Tom.
may be a hot take, but I'm standing by it.
Well, let's dive into that for a second because I don't know. Like I think most people would probably say the West is loaded. I mean, the Lakers obviously had a really good offseason. I think people are high on them. You have the Suns there, who people are very high on. You have the Warriors, who people think are going to bounce back. They added Chris Paul. You have the Kings.
I don't think Chris Paul does too much for them.
I don't think so either. But it's the Warriors, so you got to think they're still going to be relevant. I think people are high on the Kings going into next year. The Nuggets.
That's another team, like you said. That's assuming that they're linear. I mean, the Kings from last year, like the Guardians from the year before, they can take a massive step back.
Very, very fair. I think people are obviously the Nuggets are still going to be there. Dallas maybe plays a little bit better in year 2 of Kyrie and Luka. Who knows? I don't know. I think the East feels like a really, and this is another reason why it's like paramount that the Cavs do have success next year, because I view the East and I say I think they have a pretty clear path to the playoffs, and then it's just about like who you match up with. Because like the Heat are going to be there, and there's rumors that the Heat are obviously going to get Damian Lillard, and that changes the whole landscape of things. Like they're going to be that superstar team. The Celtics are going to be there. The Bucks are going to be there. But then the other team that was ahead of you is the 76ers, and it sounds like that whole situation's a mess. And James Harden wants out, and he's calling Daryl Morey a liar in China. Like I don't, to bring this back full circle to James Harden. I don't know. I think the Cavs have an opportunity to be sort of slotted in maybe a little bit higher than they were this past year, maybe that 4 seed. And then it's like, if you're hosting more games in that series, well, they were the 4 seed this past year. So it's like, I think you have a chance to maybe be like the 3 seed. Right. Like there's an opportunity there. We'll see. But well, I think there's even more pressure on him now in this East. And that adds to kind of the conversation here. If the 76ers sort of fall out of place, then you're only really talking about 3 teams that I really view as true, top tier competitors to you. I think Indiana will take another step. They'll be a little bit better. People are sort of riding Orlando as like a sleeper team, but I'm not really worried about them yet. But yeah, I think the Cavs are a top 4 team easily in this conference, and there's a chance that the 76ers drop down, and then they're really in the mix.
So I'm going to go through, since this podcast seemed like it's diverted a little bit, but that's okay. So Western Conference, last year you had the Nuggets. Nuggets are going to be silent killers again. I mean, they're a great team, top to bottom, a great coach. Yeah. Grizzlies, we know there's a ton of questions there. They were your 2 seed last year. You're going to be with Ja. You're going to be without Ja for a while. Kings were your 3 seed last year. I just kind of said the same thing. I mean, they could take another step forward, but there's just as good of a chance they could take the same step back. Suns will be good. I mean, we know that for a fact. Clippers, is Kawhi Leonard and Paul George playing more than 40, 50 games this year? We'll see. The Warriors, we kind of touched on them. You can't really count them out. Chris Paul is going to be there. I don't think that makes them too much of a better team. The Lakers, I mean, Anthony Davis, is he going to stay healthy? Is LeBron James finally going to regress? I know they just signed Christian Wood last night, but that doesn't make him. I mean, Austin Reeves, is he going to be what he was all throughout the entire season? I don't know. I just think I look at this Eastern Conference. The Bucks are incredible. The Celtics are incredible. I think that even without James Harden playing, Daryl Morey with the whole Ben Simmons situation, he's proven that he's not going to trade a player unless he's getting what he wants in return. And what he wants in return is a star player
who can help them win now. If that happens, though, like, do you see that as like a viable team, though? Like, you think James Harden's just going to like put on a happy face and play well? Like, I think he's going to end up just trying to force his way out at all costs.
I think
just undermine the team.
Oh, probably. He's not playing for the 76ers this year, but I still think that I think the 76ers are a good enough team without him that they could still be a playoff team. Like,
okay. That's
I
fair.
don't know. The
Like I said, I think you use the phrase like top heavy. I kind of feel like the East is top heavy more so than the West. I think the West is pretty solid.
I think
But to me, like from my point of view, I just think that adds to why there's even more pressure on the Cavs this year. Because like,
for
yeah,
sure. Yeah, yeah.
you slot this all out, and like the Heat finished below the Cavs last year, and especially if they get Damian Lillard, that obviously isn't happening again. But
Hmm.
the Cavs should at least be a top four team again,
Hmm.
and like, yeah, you're expecting them to take that next step. I didn't even mention the Knicks. Maybe it's because I don't want to talk about that team, but
The one team I do
um,
think is interesting that I think could disrupt a few things in the Eastern Conference are the Raptors. I mean, they're still a very
mm,
solid team with Siakam and Anunoby. I mean, Gary Trent Jr. I mean, I think they severely underperformed last year. And I mean, who knows if they make a trade or two down the line here, but I think they also with fantastic with player development. I mean, we've seen it with plenty of players. Scotty Barnes, maybe he'll take another step forward. So I think that's a team to watch that could really go up there and can disrupt a few things in the Eastern
yeah,
Conference as well.
it'll be interesting to watch that team. They feel like one of those teams that, like last year, they'll get to the trade deadline and they'll kind of be like maybe a meddling team, and it'll be like,
Hmm.
do we make a trade to kind of go for it here, or do we just kind of
Right,
sell?
right.
And we'll see what they decide to do. So. But yeah, interesting. Tommy with some good man. It's the off season, but not for Tommy, man. He's
Nah,
bringing the heat no matter what. He's saying that the East is better than the West. But I love the energy and I love the topic there. Even if it diverted us a little bit, I think it's we're looking for stuff to talk about. So
yeah,
let's get to some of these questions that you sort of posed. And the first one I think is an interesting one because you threw out who is the most important player in the Cavs
right.
next year. And the note you added with it, kind of the disclaimer you added with it, is that just because we're saying most important, it doesn't mean um,
Best
the
doesn't
best.
mean the
Yeah,
best because
it doesn't.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say I think we know that like the most important players gonna be like Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. If they're not playing well, then we're
Yeah,
in some trouble. But
yeah.
what I meant by most important players, like, is there a starter that's going to make this starting five like I don't know, not the Warriors' death lineup, but make it one of the best starting lineups in the league? Is there a bench player who's going to make the Cavs have one of the best benches in the league or start to go for the sixth man of the year? I don't know. I just think we talk about Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, that duo, and then Evan Mobley so much. Like I just want to think of some other players who are going to be could be make or break guys and help the Cavs. I don't know, make that 3 seed or 2 seed depending on the state of the Eastern Conference.
Well, why don't you take the floor first
Oh
then?
boy.
Who do you think is the most important player to
Okay.
the Cavs' upcoming season?
I think the most important player is going to be Niang. I say that
Okay,
because
I like that.
I think that we knew that front court needed more help last year. We saw it in the playoffs, and he's that kind of power forward wing player that can help them out in that situation, and give Mobley, give Jared Allen a rest, and you still have a true like power forward on the roster there. But I also think, and I talked about this with our NBA free agency podcast too, is I want to see JB Bickerstaff do some creative lineups with him, maybe playing the three. I think that I think that there could be a lot of potential to have a really nice lineup that other teams have trouble defending. So I don't know.
Mm.
I think, and he's a solid defender too. So I'm on both sides of the floor. So I think that a guy like Niang is going to be super important with where this team finishes and how far they go in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you get a stretch four type guy that can shoot the three from that position. I think that is massive. Um, I have a. This isn't going to be my answer, but I do think on some level, like the most important player is actually Evan Mobley. If we're going like overarching, I know he's a star in the making, so it's kind of a
Yeah.
cop out answer. But the reason I say that is, we talk about pressure on this team and all this different stuff. Him taking that next leap, I think,
Hmm.
is the key to all this. Like
Yeah.
where the Cavs end up, if Donovan Mitchell wants to stay and see it through, all these different things. So I think on the surface, like he is the most important player. But in terms of the question that you're asking, because you're kind of saying like, is there another piece or a guy that maybe is a role player that you think is going to take this team to the next level, or that was missing last year that's going to be huge or a huge of huge importance? And I'm going to go with the other guy that they added this offseason, big name, in Max Strus. I think there was a lot of mixed reviews on Strus when he was
Hmm.
signed, right? There was people who kind of felt, well, there was better, 3 and D type players and 3 point shooters that you could have tried to add this off season. I
Hmm.
don't know how I feel about Strus.
We were
He
critical,
was he was
when we
yeah,
did
yeah.
our podcast earlier this year. Or this summer, we were critical about
Yeah,
what that's going to look like.
that's right. And I think there was a lot of people looking and saying, look what he was doing in Miami, and he was getting a lot of open looks because people were double teaming Jimmy Butler, and
Hmm.
but at the same time he was getting double teamed a lot because they were trying to take him away, and that's why he struggled. But that he should get more open looks here because of just the sheer talent. I said that
Right,
backwards. He was getting double teamed in Miami because there wasn't a lot of weapons and they wanted to prevent
right.
him from shooting threes. Here, the idea is that he gets a lot more open looks, and
Hopefully,
people are excited about that, right?
yeah.
But I still question, like, is he as good of a 3-point shooter consistently as we think? Is he?
Hmm.
I haven't seen on the defensive end of the floor. I don't think he's as good as people are making him out to be. But I do think for this lineup to take off the way we wanted to, he does need to be that contributor from that spot. That spot has been just a black hole for
For
the
sure.
last 2 years of figuring out who fits there, who's the right person, who's going to make enough threes to sort of lift up this offense and this team. And we haven't had an answer for that. I'm hoping, for the sake of the Cavs, I hope Max
Right.
Strus is it. But
Yeah,
I have some questions. So yeah, I'm going to the season, full on waiting to see what we get from him because I think he's going to be super super important to the success of this team.
I can't disagree with that one at all. Cannot disagree with that one at all. All right, the
All
next
right,
question I had given you, or do you want to do that? Do you want to do that one?
no, go ahead, take it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The next question, and obviously want to hear your thoughts as well. Who are you most excited to watch this season?
Maybe this is a bit of like an obvious answer, so I don't mean to make it seem that way, but I am probably most excited to watch Emoni Bates
Oh, man, that was
play.
mine.
Is that your answer?
That was my answer
We
too.
didn't we didn't do enough prep before the
I
show. We
know,
were
I
getting
know.
ready
I
because
was
I
like,
didn't ask you if.
I was gonna ask you what yours was, but then we don't have this raw reaction like we have right here.
Hey, the raw reaction is what we live for. So,
Exactly.
no, I think a lot of people, if we have the same answer, I think a lot of people are probably sharing that because,
Yeah.
listen, what they did in summer league is awesome. It's a cool
Hmm.
story, and I do think there's certainly some positive things to take away from that. But all of that comes with the caveat and the
Yep.
context that,
Yeah.
hey, it was the summer league.
Hmm.
Let's pump the brakes on what we think about any of these guys who are like really having a massive role in that, Amani
Right.
included. But
Right.
yeah, the thing with Amani coming out of college was guy with super super high ceiling potential who was a top recruit in the country at one point coming out of high school, and then it just wasn't really realized in his college situations, and then people questioned whether or not he had the drive and the want to.
Right. Yeah.
If it seems like, at least as of now, he seems to be having that drive, he seems to be saying the right things, seems to have the right attitude. Will that translate to the regular season and this organization? And if it does, is there something actually viable there? I'm not expecting him to make like a massive impact
No.
this year, maybe ever. But if there's
Yeah.
something viable there where he becomes like a role player for them or a bench player for them down the line, like I'd love to see it. So I'm certainly going to have my eyes on him.
Yeah. I think it's also funny because I think there's actually more hype around him, the fact that he's in the G League, because he only has like that limit of so many games with the Cavs. So it's like when Amani Bates is like with the Cavs, like everyone's going to be tuning in because is he going to play? Is he not going to play? So I almost think
Yeah.
that the fact that he only has like so many games, he's on that 2-way contract. When he's with the team, people are going to be tuning in. But no, I had my exact same reason.
Yeah.
I'll for the sake of doing something a little bit different. The player I'm most excited to see, I'll use your Evan Mobley example. Can he take
Yeah.
that year 3 jump?
Huge.
I know that there's been some off season videos of him in the gym, in open gyms and everything, and it does look like he maybe built some muscle. I'm also taking all that for granted. We don't know other Alex Caruso. We're all got. Do you remember that when Alex Caruso, like that edit of him came out, and then he got like
Yeah. Yeah. I do
yeah, we don't.
remember
I don't
that.
want any of that. So we'll see what happens when he shows up at training camp. But
Well, and he looked bigger at training camp last year too. So we'll see if
yeah,
he's even
I
bigger
know.
this year at training
Right,
camp. But
right. But I'm taking all those X, Twitter, whatever you're gonna call it, videos and pictures for granted until we see it in
that's
person.
fair. That's fair.
um, but I do think that if he takes that year 3 jump, if all of a sudden he's not just a good power forward, but an all-star power forward, this lineup changes. I mean, that changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
I think you're 100% right. And I'll say this about Emoni Bates as well. Um, we, it's funny because I think we spent way too much time like debating a guy who will probably only ever become a role player for the Cavs. I don't mean to like put rain on
no, I
people's
mean I think
parade
it's fair.
or dump water on the fire, but like the outrage that there was, like not even outrage, but just like the reaction that there was just from a sports talk standpoint, and the fan
Yeah,
reaction to Emoni Bates, and people like, man, like people really ripping on this guy, and then there's other people who are like, he's going to be a superstar, and I was like, guys, can we just like meet in the middle and agree that
right.
this might just end up being like a role player for them, and the
Yeah,
impact of him on the current setup of the Cavs, and if they're going to win a championship, he's going to have like very minimal to do with that. But yeah, listen, if they can find something in that, I'd love to see it, and I hope that comes to fruition. And that 2-way contract you mentioned is huge because
yeah,
he's going to get some time up with the main team, the Cavs, and when he does, like there'll be a lot of people who are tune into those games, not just to see him,
hmm
but certainly like glued to, okay, when he comes in,
right,
what's he doing, and is there something
right.
viable there?
Yeah, and I would say along with kind of what you were saying, like it was a second round pick. He's a second round pick,
Yeah,
former 5-star recruit, and the Cavs need wings. I mean, it was an obvious pick for them to take him. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I can't blame him for taking him.
no, not at all, not at all.
If you're only drafted in the second round and you're looking for maybe a chance to hit on something, that's the type of player I think you take. You take
Yeah,
somebody who has a very high ceiling from a potential standpoint, but that might be a project, and if you hit on it, then you look like a genius. So,
right.
because you hit on a second round guy.
hmm
So yeah, I can't blame him for that at all. We'll see if there actually is anything viable in Emoni Bates. All right, that's going to do it for us. I think we've had some good conversation. Again, it's still a little early in the full fledged Cavs conversation here, but we're just a few weeks out. Like I said, about a month out from the start of the preseason. Let's throw those questions at you. You can respond in the comments. You can hit us up on Twitter at CavsInsider_FN. Who is the most important player to the Cavs' success in 2023? And it doesn't necessarily have to be an obvious, Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland or the stars. And then also, who's the player that you're most excited to watch play on this team in 2023-24, obviously. But yeah, again, hit us up, answer those questions. We appreciate you guys jumping in as always. And we'll be back here. What do we think? Maybe another. We're going to play it by ear. But I
Yeah,
think until we get through September, I think we're looking at probably every other week for this. And then we'll start picking things up big time in October with a weekly podcast here at Cavs Insider. So
we
appreciate
promise
you guys.
we'll get a new routine. We'll get a
Yeah,
new routine.
big. Here's the way we tease it, Tommy. Big things coming
Big things
at
are coming.
CavsInsider.com and here on the YouTube page and with Cavs Insider. So just stay tuned, and we're looking forward to spending a lot more time with you this season. Thanks for watching. For Tommy, for myself, have a great one.